This is the moment. The auditorium erupts into applause as Magnus Carlsen being wraps up the greatest tournament performance of all time. As you can see from the stats on screen here, the record stood for 61 years, held by the legend Bobby Fischer. Magnus has gone and smashed it in this freestyle chess event. We're going to look at the final two games he played today. It's the 21st of April, bank holiday Monday. This was his first game against Ralph Mamadov, and then we're moving on to the Vincent Keimer if you've got timer. Now let's dive in on this one. It's round 8 with the white pieces. Kicking off with e4 is Ralph. Magnus goes for the Sicilian kind of move, and look at this. He plays some normal stuff with white, takes the pawn, and what do you know? Look at Ival Barovic. Already Magnus is a bit better. This is the craziness of freestyle chess. So Magnus brings the knight out, preparing to recapture the pawn, and no c4 to support, or the knight simply takes. So instead we see d4 striking at the centre. Magnus now checks, and what do you know? With the king under fire, Ralph feels obliged to guard it with the queen here, but bang, Magnus whips them off the board. Few of his biggest fans start bleating away in the audience. They know what's to come. The grind. c4 is now played, and I love how this one explosive pawn move takes control of this knight and almost locks down that queen side there. c3 is therefore played. Now the knight develops. This one enters the game like this, goes on a big old weird journey just to recapture this bishop after Magnus takes, but yay, you get back to the starting square. Happy days. Magnus now picks up the pawn in the center. g3 takes control of a key square, and f6, usually very stinky, but it sits two squares in front of a knight. Always good to stop the jumps, so it simply drops back now, headed for the center in a different way. Magnus plays this little rook move. Somehow it's the best move, as usual. Also a bit prophylactic. You know, if b3, then you're well positioned to crash through here. And now we see the knight centralize, and because it's headed for that monster c5 square where it really looms, that's why Magnus plays this move. Bit stinky. Bishop d6. Doesn't look pretty, but it stops the important knight jump. Now we see king d2. Ralph just trying to play some weirdness, blocking all his pieces, getting Magnus's head, but he's undeterred. He pushes with f5, and we do see the bishop chopped. This looks a bit tasty, headed for here, but actually doesn't really get you anywhere. King just steps up, and the rook can start attacking, that sort of thing. So the knight takes, pawn recaptures, Ralph gets the open file, lovely jubbly, but Magnus just steps up, connects those rooks. The king now sidesteps to open up those bits on the back rank, and Magnus forgets which way his ponies are supposed to move, but of course he's maneuvering, baby. We get knight d2, the pawn is supported here, and now I love this. If you know a guy named Gary, give him a hug, because they're a dying breed, especially here in Britain, and especially when you're willing to just sacrifice them on the board like Ralph does here with Gary the g-pawn. Now what's the big idea? Well, if you take, you gain access to the e4 square. Suddenly you're hopping, you're having a pony party. So that's why we didn't see takes. And equally, if you do this one, you know how many of us are doing this? Bang, the knight rotates, the knight rotates. It's counterplay, baby, not what you want. So Magnus doesn't do this or takes. Of course he plays the best move. Brings this one round, hitting the pawn. So we do see captures, best move. But now he gets to just drop back here, and you can't actually defend that doubled pawn. And guess what? After knight f3 takes, we'll look at the difference in pawn structure. Couple of pawn islands here to join this lot over here, and therefore Magnus stands that little bit better. Plus his knight's a bit better than the bishop. How's Ralph gonna fight back? Answer is he can't, but I love this, right? He decides to pick up this guy, and bang, he lands one of those bad boys, a check. He sits down the pub later on in the evening. He's like, guys, I got crushed by the world number one, but stop. I landed a check. but Magnus just steps back, that wriggly little customer, and hang on, can't you double these rooks? Super quick time. Well, no, you kick the knight, this sort of thing, and black's in time to challenge the file. You don't even have to do it straight away. You can play a bunch of other waiting, improving moves, but white's a bit more paralysed. What to do? So we didn't see the rook invasion. Instead, we get the knight step back, an exchange of those donkeys. Now rook recaptures, king f7, and Magnus prepares to challenge the file. First, we see the double stack, and here it comes. Someone is about to get rook rolled down the open e file. f3 played, h6 from Magnus, and d5 is one of the top moves here, cementing this pawn as a backwards target for the bishop. But not played, immediately attacked. Magnus can now go d5 for the high five, and after this one gets active, he chops off, rook recaptures, and again he's just in full control of the pie here. Drops back, beautiful baking, no time for bishop g5, so rook e2 is played. Looking to spin round perhaps, but Magnus once again lifts into the game, whispering, do you even rook lift, bro? And he's just on top of everything. The knight now hits to defend, and of course it's unassailable. You've not got old Gary. We now see king d2, preparing to release the rook, covering e3. This one attacks, a3 played, and look at this. Magnus just whooshes across the board, announces it as he does so. I mean, this is just a grind. He's grinding like a grandma deep into the end game. Him and David Howell have made an art form of the grind, right? Anyone can do it. Get bopping, shaking, bump and grind at the board is how you get the job done. Pick up those half points instead of making the draw. Now we see king e1. Check, it steps up. Magnus swings in behind here. The bishop hits c7, but look at this. a6, and that is an absolute jaffa. Firing blanks all over the place. You just can't get at this light squared pawn chain. Meanwhile, these are all hard to actually do anything with. You can't advance them. Stops your own bishop running around. Now we see the bishop go to d8, but here comes the march of the imperial overlord. King g2. In it comes on the light squares where it's safe from this guy. Now bishop c7. Magnus checks. The king stays with the pawn. And g5 starts the march of the foot soldiers. This one drops back. Maybe threatening to take. Magnus wants none of it. He's got the superior minor piece. King g2. Rook d1. Look at it snaking away. The king steps here. Magnus attacks. Ralph is just waiting at this point. And you could technically check here. Give up knight to activate the king. But instead we get a5, ignore the question mark, right? A small slip up of accuracy, usually a good idea. You don't want the fair play officer on your case, right? He's hot on the heels of everyone at this tournament. We now see king f2, and before Ralph can do anything else, Magnus pushes p, sets up a stunning bathtub pawn formation just to really put the icing on the cake. We get takes, pawn recaptures, and now this is a cardinal sin. You know, going rook e3 is best. If Magnus checks, you can step back. Now I found some lines where you do swap the rooks, you play b3, you start bringing in the knight in all sorts of weird ways. I was about to say there, but not there. But there's all these journeys you can do. The king can get active, the pawns can push. White's still under pressure. Okay, no rook exchange though. Instead, we get takes on b4. I mean, that is a structure that only a mother could love. Not ideal. Now we see rook b3, double whammy, but the bishop blocks. The rook still covers. However, knight h4. And you're double hitting this pawn. And do not play this one. Yes, takes on b2 check is a good move, but even better is this, and you go to Forktown. Population Ralph. That's game over. So let's step back. No rook e3. We see the bishop come to c5. Just a big pawn really, not ideal. Takes with check. The king steps back. The rook steps back. It's an absolute beautiful technical masterpiece. In hops the knight, and it's now supported by the g-pawn. Stunning stuff. Absolute octopus that Stocktopus can be proud of. Here comes the second pawn. Now the rook keeps the king honest here, but Magnus just steps back. And again, he's just playing patiently, right? One of the rules rules of the endgame. Every Russian schoolboy knows. King's now cut, but h4, here they come. Rook e2, rook d3, and look at that. Not only are these pawns running, not only is the king better, not only are these horribly weak, but this one is now dropping unavoidably. King b1, always play it. Knight takes, hitting the rook. We get check, king goes, and look at this. You can't even take this pawn, or the king steps in, hits two guys, and you're dropping a piece or an exchange, whatever, right? Absolutely horrible. If you don't take the pawn, what do? Wait somewhere. But okay, the knight hops back, the pawns keep running. This is the general idea. You've got a pass d pawn. Soon you can make a passer over here. The king can get super active if you ever let it in. It's just a lost endgame, right? Stunning stuff. We're going to now jump to our second and final game of the day, and this one was even more beautiful against the German number one, Vincent Keimer. Let's check it out.
Mushrooms.
So here we go with the final round game, the Pierre de Resistance. Magnus Carlsen opening with the lady finger, and Vincent so impressed he does the same here. Now the knight exits the corner. Is there anything forlorner? We see the very, very stinky f6, and we got to ask ourselves, what do we know about chess at this point? Because Magnus spawns a seahorse, and you're usually very well advised to not move the same piece twice in the opening. Here, it's the best move somehow. Now, it hits the pawn, which is undefended. That's the key thing. And if you push like this, then the knight can hop here, and out of nowhere, you're picking up the bishop pair. Normally, you want to hold on to that. So that's why we see knight d6. Good move. Defending the pawn. No time to be doing this and winning the queen. The bishop does cover the square. Now we see this great move from Magnus, and it prompts Peter Lecco to go wow, because Magnus finds pawn h4, plowing it down the board.
So Vincent is not playing against Magnus Carlsen, he plays against a machine.
And I love how Lawrence Trent just adds the absolute profound commentary icing on the cake here.
It's very difficult to beat somebody who always plays the best moves.
Gotta love a Lawrence quote. Now we see this move of a5. Looks very, very weird. But the idea is we're going to see. Because after bishop h2, now we get b6. And if you hop here, well, the bishop can escape. Now, guess what? This is actually the top move of Stock Mollusk, the all-seeing engine. Because although the knight's trapped, there's this ninja tactical stuff that gets it out and creates counterplay. Not going to go down that route. Understandably, Magnus didn't want to trap his own knight, so he drops back here. Look at the symmetry on the d file there. The titans are about to be unleashed. Now we get the pawn push. Magnus defends his center, and the explosive c4 kicks the pony into here, and it puts pressure on the center with the queen in combination. So surely b5, Magnus going f3, looking for e4. You can't be playing e5 in response, but it's exactly what Vincent does, probably just developing a bit more prudent. But he lashes out, and he's just misevaluated the position, because after takes, yes, he has seen that his center is collapsing, but this is his point. Bang, the queen takes, and it's murder on the dark squares here, potentially. There's also a pin against this rook. So Magnus has a little think here, goes into the tank. His hair's absolutely exploding as his big brain works overdrive, and he finds the absolutely awesome pawn to g4. I mean, it's truly a special move. You know, when you see it, it makes great sense, but so difficult to find. And the idea is you can now go king g2, protects the rook, and then you can threaten to kick the queen by moving the bishop, and you leave the bishop free to take the pawn. You know, you didn't go pawn g3. These are the subtle ideas. Vincent now goes bishop a7, looking for the checkmate. And I love how he just looks all over the room, left, right, up. Never look in your opponent's eyes when you're threatening mate in one. Really bamboozle them, hope that they don't see it, but Magnus sees it. World number one, pushes pawn e3 here, and we've got to ask ourselves, what happens if you take here? You know, the knight's defending the pawn, queen takes, crash through, mate in 1 threatened, rah. Well, the problem is this is dropping with check, and the king is in the firing line. You know, rook's dropping, the whole house collapsing. Here's one way to do it and win the bishop, or say you step here, or you can just block with the rook anyway, and black is absolutely toast. So we come back here, no good taking the knight. Instead we see queen h6, and it's Vincent just trying to get out of dodge before this stuff comes on the board. Again, it's not about winning this pawn, because after king g2 we now see the queen slide to e6, cover this pawn, cover the knight. You know, if you tried to take here, again after takes, you were just opening the queen. So we now see pawn e4 from Magnus, really cementing this one in the center. Knight c7, and you could take on c7, but Magnus doesn't do it. He's setting these tricky problems for his opponent. He plays the epic knight c2. I mean, this is why he practices. This is why he visualizes his pony maneuvering. It's for moments like this, right? He's saying to Vincent, sure, take me here. I'll take with the queen. And if you want to go for the double whammy on the d5 square, win a pawn, lovely jubbly, well, I've got this one at the end of the line, and a piece is being won by force. You know, no good doing this. Probably bishop g1, didn't check it out, but it's just collapsing, right? So you can't actually win that pawn there. This one's always on tap as well. So instead we get the 000. Don't worry if you've had a drink. Let's do an action replay on that. We see it too. Looks very weird when you freestyle castle. Now we get the knight rotating. h5 apparently best. It does get played soon. First, Vincent gets very, very defensive here. Bit of a meek move. And after Magnus activates his own queen, connects his rooks, you can just see him starting to flow. He's in full freestyle vibe mode. He's now eyeballing this pawn with the queen and so on. You'll see the point, because after knight takes, suddenly if the bishop takes, pawn recaptures, well, you've got all this pressure barreling down on the pawn, as well as this one, you know, advanced, bishops opened up, so on and so forth. So h5 was played. It's a good move. Looks to blast off this guy like Katy Perry in the Astronauts. Now we see bishop g3 creating that pin, and after bishop e6, putting the pressure on the pawn. There's many different lines here. Don't be taking this guy. You lose all the initiative. Black picks up huge play, but this is a nice move. g5. There were other good ones, and after this move from Vincent, Magnus really comes into his own here. Now h4 immediately may be better. Instead we see rook d7. Looks a bit weird, but does go for a double stack soon. Magnus activates his own cannon. h4 is not the best, but it's a nice randomizer. Magnus takes. Again, he had options, but we're not going to get lost in the craziness. But now you have to follow up with queen h5. Absolute best move. We've gone to the back cave here. Vincent's on about 5 minutes, so it is very, very tricky. But you do put the pressure down here, but it's not so easy to sort of move this out of the way and then do some weird stuff. You know, if you try it now, you actually get mated. Here's a sample line. Remember this guy, whoops, cutting the party. This is one sample, that's a checkmate. So that was the way to go, bring the queen out. But missed, queen d8 was played, and yes, it puts pressure down the d file, creates this weird pin with the rook and queen, but after Magnus finds the truly brilliant only move to keep a decent advantage, queen e1, now he's in some trouble, Vincent Keimer, because he lifts this rook, whispering, do you even rook lift, bro? But Magnus now activates the queen, still defending everything here, also pressuring the pawn, and Vincent just cracks like a really beautiful chocolate egg that you've left in the fridge for a couple days. Snap. He should go queen e8 here. It's apparently the best move. Okay, fine, whatever. He doesn't find that move. Instead, he plays knight f5, but it's a massive blunder. The question marks of doom on the board. Magnus has got a good 10 minutes to figure it out, and sure enough he does so. He captures the piece given. Yes, Vincent wins it straight back. This is his point, but after takes here, never explored actually why not taking immediately. What's the problem? Takes. Oh, okay, the queen's on the rook. As you can tell, it's like 20 past 10 here. I'm struggling to keep up. fine. So this is why Magnus doesn't do that. He instead takes here, takes, rook takes, bishop recaptures, and now he plays this killer Queen G4. Love those creeping moves. You hit the rook, which is undefended, and you hit the king, which is exposed on C8. You know, the prophylactic king move earlier was prudent, but not played. What do we see? Well, if you retreat the rook, wasn't played, now you can play this with a discovered check, no bishop e6, king goes, and look at that pawn. It's a monster. Say you try and round it up, well, there's this, and this is an absolutely deadly pin. Say you capture the pawn, preparing rook d7 upon bishop e4, well, you can invert the order, smash through straight away. Queen takes, bishop e4, you get an absolutely kebab down here. So these are the problems, you know, discovered check on the way. So this one was played to cover the rook, but now g6 cuts the connection and you've got two pieces hanging. What to do? Well, give up the exchange, of course. First the check, now we have it played. Queen takes back, the bishop saves itself, hits a pawn, but this one finally enters the game from the starting square. It's a long-ranged weapon. We do see captures. Queen takes back, few checks here, but the problem is you can hide on the light squares, and yes, there's another check from down here, but after king g3, goading Vincent to come and check on the dark squares, you can still hide out on the Milky Bar complex. So instead we get king c7, now f6, look at the space invaders running down the board, check is played, you could have gone with the queen, doesn't matter, all roads lead to Grenke, now king h3, what to do? The bishop steps back, I mean if you take, this one's running in one way or another anyway. This one was played, now takes, now the check once more, king g2, another check, king g3, and this is where Vincent Keimer resigned the game. Same motifs, right? What to do? Yeah, check the king, step back, cover the square, but now you just invade. We'll play it through to a checkmate. We all love seeing a checkmate. Here's one way you could do it. Get the queens off, make another baby girl. It's in the delivery suite. There it goes. That's a mate on the board. Possible finishing line, right? This the final position. Magnus Carlsen making history, the highest tournament performance rating ever. Truly outstanding in the field of that caliber. Wow, wow, wow. And of course, there was really only one thing to be done at this stage. The fair play officer stepped up to the plate, took one for the team, initiated the procedure.
And trust me, it's an absolute banger. It's a game changer.
Mushrooms.
Banger.
Mushrooms.
Procedure,
Mushrooms.
Banger.
lock. This is first what I do.
Thanks very much for watching. Have a look at the video on screen for another epic game of chess, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.